In this tutorial, we're going to talk about how to use the UV color changing IronOn vinyl by Cricut. The supplies I'm going to use for this particular tutorial is my Cricut cutting machine. I'll also use a Cricut mat, a weeding tool, some regular everyday IronOn vinyl, as well as the Cricut UV color changing vinyl, a brayer tool, and then you'll also need to have a heat press. I am going to be using the Easy Press here. Alright, so we are in Cricut Design Space and I want to show you one quick trick before we actually dive into using our UV color changing vinyl. I also have a video on how to use the hot and cold color changing adhesive vinyl, so I will link that also below for you so you can check that out. We did that in a live together. The one thing I want to show you here is with the UV color changing vinyl is you can mix it with everyday iron-on vinyl. So maybe you only want part of the design to change color in the sun, and then the other part, it remains just an everyday iron-on as a solid color, which can be a great way to mix your colors and to get a specific color palette that you might be looking for your shirt. So the first thing I want to do is you would need to import these designs. These designs are freebies, so they're going to be linked below for you if you would like to download them for yourself. You'll visit the upload button here in the design panel, and then you'll click upload image. You'll browse your computer to wherever you saved the file, and then you will bring it into Design Space here and then click add to canvas. There is a full in-depth tutorial on uploading SVGs to Cricut linked below for you if you need more help as a beginner. Now, once you get the files brought in here, you're going to need to scale them to your preferred size. This is going to vary based on what are you placing this on. If it's a t-shirt, what size t-shirt is it? For me, I'm placing this on a shirt for my daughter, so around 6 inches is where I want to keep the scale. But you can come to any one of these corners and scale larger or smaller. You see the size reflected here and also at the top of the edit bar if you wish to make more specific decimal changes. Now what I want to do is I want to slice out the heart from the base of the white daisy, and the reason I want to do this is because I want the center of the daisy here to be an everyday iron-on in yellow, and then I want the white part of the daisy to be our UV color changing vinyl. So the first thing I always like to do when I'm slicing a design is duplicate it, okay? Usually you end up needing some piece of the original to seamlessly create a perfectly sliced result. So I always duplicate mine. Right click and then just hit duplicate. We're going to set that right there. Come back to this one. Make sure this is ungrouped, okay? So right click and ungroup, and then select both of those layers, the heart and the daisy. Click on your slice tool at the bottom of the layers panel. And then you're going to see your layers panel change over here where we have all these sliced results. Go ahead and pull these apart. So I've got this one, this one, this one, and then some like weird straggly pieces there. Now, this is an example of why I said we need to duplicate the design. If we look closely here at our results, this base piece here in white is what we want to keep, but we obviously don't want these. These are pointless, so we would delete them. And the yellow center that we would use, we can see, if we look closely at the edges there, that it created some overlap in the slice, and I don't want it to be cut out like that. So to make this a perfect slice result, I'm going to delete these two heart pieces over here, and I'm going to come back to this one. It's our original, ungroup it as well. So here's a contrast before and after the slice here for the base of our daisy. This is with the slice tool, this is without the slice tool. I no longer need this piece, so we're going to delete that, and we're going to use the yellow heart here and pull it right over, and it sits seamlessly right inside of our design. So that means when we add these two layers together, each layer is making direct contact with the fabric beneath it, therefore ensuring a much better result and a longer lasting design on our t-shirt or whatever fabric material you might be using in the event, especially if you're washing it. So we're all set to go now. Make sure you save your project, click save, and then click on the Make It button. And here we have each of our layers. So this layer here in white, I'm going to cut out in the UV color changing vinyl. It goes from a white to a purplish blue. And then this one here, I'm going to cut out an everyday iron-on. Now you also need to make sure that you mirror your design. This one is pretty symmetrical, so it's really not going to make a big difference, but when you're working with iron-on vinyl, you need to mirror so that everything is facing the correct direction when you place it down on your project, your base of your project. So this is especially important if you're working with like text. So I'm gonna toggle on the mirror over here for these mats. and now all the mirror is turned on. We can see that, and then you'll click continue, and it's going to connect to our Cricut machine. If you click on browse all materials and just type in UV, you will see that option. And if you type in color changing, you'll also see the hot and cold activated option for the adhesive vinyl. Okay, that would work on like cups and things like that. So I'm going to select the color changing UV one. For the center of my daisy in this example, I am going to be using regular everyday iron-on vinyl. The setting everyday iron-on vinyl, this vinyl here is a heat transfer vinyl, also known as IronOn, but it is by Expressions Vinyl, so it looks a little different than the Cricut brand, but the same setting works just fine on that. So you want to make sure you put it shiny side down, or pretty side down in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and load this into my Cricut machine here. I'm going to press the flashing play icon, or it might look like a Cricut C icon, to proceed with the cut. Again, I'm using the everyday iron-on setting here. This is not UV changing here. I'm going to be combining it with the UV changing, and we're going to be layering it together. I like to flip my mat over and peel the mat away from the material. And now for the daisy petals of this, I'm going to do the white to blue. I guess you could also call it purple. When you pull it out, it'll be in this black case here, this plastic cover. So you'll need to lift it out. I strongly recommend with any of the color changing or the UV changing, always keep the tube and put it back in, because there's no markings on here to remember that it's the UV changing versus regular iron-on, and the same thing with the color changing for the hot and cold. So for this one, I am going to be placing it again shiny side down. Don't forget to mirror in design space. You want to use a brayer tool to push the material to the mat. It really helps, especially if your mat is well worn. I'm going to select the UV color changing iron-on vinyl in Cricut Design Space. And then I'm just going to cut this down with my straight cutter here. So I like to try and keep straight edges to my vinyl as much as possible. Make sure you roll this up and you store it in its original tube so you can easily identify it for future projects. And keep the cap on it, and I'll keep it in good condition. All right, so I need to go ahead and weed my iron-on vinyl here. So again, shiny side down or pretty side down, and you're just gonna come to the corner and you want to weed off the excess. So this one here is the UV. I find that the UV iron-on, it feels identical in pretty much every way to the everyday iron-on. It simply just has that little magic trick up its sleeve where it changes color when you get it out in the sun. Alright, so we have our heart daisy design weeded and ready to go here. So we need to heat up our easy press. So my shirt is 100% cotton, and then I looked up with the Cricut Heat Guide, which I will link below for you, what the setting should be for the UV color changing, and then the everyday iron-on, which is similar for a cotton-based shirt. So just take a look at that heat guide linked below if you were not sure of your settings. Mine is 315 in temperature for 30 seconds. Anytime you're getting ready to do iron-on a shirt especially, but even for things like tote bags, pillowcases, fabric materials in general, it's a good idea to press it for like 15 seconds just to get the wrinkles and any moisture out of the shirt. It just preps the material to receive the iron-on better. So I just always recommend doing that. So I'm gonna do that first here. Get it flattened out here. And then we'll grab the press, it's fully heated. And I'm just gonna set it down, and there's really no right or wrong amount of time, but 15 to 30 seconds for this. I'm just gonna slightly shift it to cover all that area there. And if this is something you're gonna wear right after, while I have my easy press hot, I'll come down here and I'll get the wrinkles out of the bottom too. I like to use it as an iron sometimes. Okay, there we go. So our material is wrinkle-free, moisture-free, It's slightly warm, so that's good for our heat transfer vinyl as it's going on. So you can just eyeball this. You can use one of those t-shirt guides, you know, to center things. So one thing you can do to get a center point nice and easily without any extra tools, especially if it's a V-neck, but I've done it with a U-neck too, just pay attention to the tag location. You can fold it in half and just take a second to get that sort of aligned. So I've got this shirt folded perfectly in half here, and just take your heat press and hold it there for just like 5 seconds or so that it gives it a nice crease. And then when you open it up and you lay it down, you have this nice center line that gives you a good visual for centering your design. So that's just a super little in-house hack for you there, where you don't have to have anything special otherwise. All right, so when we're layering iron-on vinyl, here I've demonstrated the slice and set technique. So every piece of vinyl here is going to make contact with the fabric below it. It's not going to be vinyl on top of vinyl, which is going to extend the life greatly. You always want to put down the largest piece first. In this case, it would be the white daisy part, because you are going to need to place this down second, and then we'll use the largest liner to cover and protect the design from our heat that we placed down first. So I'm going to go ahead and place this with that line that I have there. I'm going to fold this in half and kind of use it as a center line also. I'm just creasing it right at the top there and opening it back up. And it gives me sort of a visual guide. Might be a little hard to see on camera, but it works pretty well in person. All right, so there we go. We've got that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and grab my heat press, and I'm going to press this for the 30 seconds. Press that play icon there and it'll count down. Okay, so as per the Cricut heat guide instructions, when we're working typically with iron-on, especially when it's going into a fabric, you need to let it cool before you lift the liner. This is important because unlike adhesive vinyl, your heat transfer iron-on vinyl is only activated to bind to the material by the heat. And if that heat hasn't had time to fully rise and then fully cool to seal that adhesion to your fabric, you're not going to be able to lift the liner up without potentially still lifting the iron-on vinyl itself up. So give it a good 2 to 4 minutes to where it is cool enough to touch and you don't feel a lot of heat radiating off the top of it. Then you'll be able to peel off your first liner, and then make sure we save this liner. Okay, so mine is cool to the touch now, and I'm going to start peeling this liner back. If for any reason it looks like it's wrinkling and not sticking, then it maybe isn't cool yet, or maybe you need to press it for another 15 seconds, let it fully cool, and then try again. I am not having any problems with mine. This liner for the UV is very sticky, so know that when you're seeing lifting, it may just be the fabric reacting to the tension of the stickiness of the liner. Okay, so there is our white part of our daisy. This is the UV part. We're going to take this piece now that we sliced out. We're going to get it lined up right in there. Now it's super important that you protect the rest of this design from the heat. So that liner that we just lifted up, don't get rid of it. You want to place it back down so that all of our vinyl is covered with a plastic liner. You do not ever want to put your heat press directly onto any material like the vinyl, a fusible ink, that kind of stuff. So now that it's protected with that original liner, we're going to place this down, press for 30 seconds, let it cool completely, and then lift both those liners up to finish our project. Okay, so this is cool to the touch now. I'm going to take that initial first liner off. It looks like the other liner beneath it is also kind of coming with it at the same time, so just go slow to make sure everything's staying where it should. There we go. That other liner for the heart piece is stuck to it right there. Okay, there we go. So that is the slice and set technique. You can repeat that process if you have another 1 or 2 additional colors. Just make sure you're slicing things out in design space so every layer is making contact. And there's no reason you can't mix the UV heat transfer vinyl with a regular heat transfer vinyl, especially if you go that route. Let's take a closer look at how these UV color changing vinyls look outside in the sun.